Thanks for joining us on Groundbreaking Indie Artists. Coco Desrosiers here. Today we welcome California Bay Area guitarist and songwriter Danny Hauger, talking about his brand new album, Swan Dive. He joins us via Skype. Hello, Danny.
Hello, Coco. It's so great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation to join you today on your program. It is a pleasure.
You've been giving away music now for a decade on Danny Hauger podcasts.
Yep.
That's tremendous. And over 500,000 people have checked out your music. What's that process been like for you?
Weird to think that it's been over 10 years since Danny Hauger podcast started in the roots of Cal State Fullerton and Dominican University radio and the college circuit. Mostly it's been quiet. This is why it's such a pleasure to be on your show today and to be with you talking to someone who talks to musicians often. That's really feels good. But the process has been awesome. Weekly songwriting, at least a couple of new songs a week. And I think so many artists that I enjoy are those that interact with their audience and who give often. You know, bands like Guster, Toad the Wet Sprocket, the Gin Blossoms, who are giving of themselves. So for me, not being able to go on the road and holding down a steady job and having music be a hobby and sometimes lucrative and sometimes playing live, but being able to give away songs online and connecting, knowing that there are that many people that are downloading around the world, even if it might not reflect in popularity charts or radio play, the fact that it is reaching some audience somewhere is a good enough reason for me. And it's good enough reason to keep being creative and offering my music to the world. And, you know, a lot of people will choose popular music, but those who search, I think, enjoy what they find with my music.
Your previous album, Together Now, was released in February, and you're already back with Swan Dive.
Yeah, already.
What is your motivation right now for releasing another record?
I love talking to people that actually do background research. It makes me happy. It reminds me of days interviewing artists in Titan Radio days, you know, actually trying to come up with questions that people weren't expecting. But the motivation for me is that if I have the disadvantages of not being able to find an audience because of lack of airplay and commercial existence to support musicians like me, then I am going to take advantage of the liquid nature of internet radio and being able to produce my own music, in that I can release whenever I want. I am in charge of me, and I will take advantage of that creative control and freedom. I had the songs. I had more than 40 songs. I cut it down to 29.
Sounds like it. 29 songs. When do you ever sleep?
You have a great laugh, by the way. Sleep comes whenever my new baby Dana lets it come. She's 2 months and a week old. So sleep is wherever she will allow it at this point. And maybe that's part of the motivation, too, for getting these songs out now, is I consider it, for me, as a part-time songwriter, full-time teacher, kind of a new step in my career, a new step in my family life, a new step in my life. So I wanted to clearly delineate everything up to Swan Dive was kind of like my solo writing, and everything now is going to be me as a totally different person and perspective.
Where did the name Swan Dive come from?
Something like I've always liked as a phrase. Not that you talk about it that often, but it's a couple of different sources. But most recently, getting the phone call that we were going to have a green light to distribute this album and have a little bit of support to do that, I had turned to my class after lunch and said, listen, guys, I love embracing opportunities, and I love bringing in the creativity of the people around me to kind of influence and look back in the moment and say, like, hey, what made me call it that, or what made me do that, or write that song? And I said, guys and girls, of course, if you could come up with a name or some kind of a piece of art, you know, I need this quickly. I love doing quick turnarounds, and by tomorrow, I will have submitted a whole new album, and you'll know you were a part of it. And I have a student who suggested that, you know, I could draw you something. They came up with this swan, this black and white ink swan that was, you know, probably a 25 minute production. And I'm like, oh, here's the chance. That phrase Swan Dive is in my head. Let's make that the name of the album.
You have an indie alternative sound, and there's a lot of instrumental on this album. Where did that inspiration come from?
I think from a number of sources who I will try to emulate in my personal practice time and even in recording sessions, but never truly capture. And so some of the songwriting influences for this collection, in part, it's Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket, who've had the pleasure to interview on Danny Hauger podcast. It's Ryan Miller, the same from Guster, who he inspires me so much, and I see him with his family, and I think that it gives me hope that I can continue to write songs and still manage what will be a growing family, hopefully. And as my daughter grows up, that, she might have that duet song with me at some point. But it's also contemplating like what it's like to be at this point, and thinking about songwriter legend Jim Croce, who at 30 tragically passed away in a plane crash. And while I will never be able to do what he did, put 30 chords into Time in a Bottle, or write a character song as driving and motivating as like Bad Leroy Brown or You Don't Mess Around with Jim, but it's all the time I spend listening to them that will change my own thought process. And I won't try to write their songs, but I will try to write their version of me, or try to feel what it's like to be them for just a minute, and then sit down, but write through my own perspective, knowing what other songwriters have gone through. And I still remain a big Billy Joe Armstrong fan from Green Day too, although without a band, I can't hope to approach kind of their style of music, but it's his heart and passion and drive that always inspired me too. So some combination of those writers with a little bit of Chris Rowe from the Ataris, and Dan too from Augustana, and kind of just the way that they write, it seems like it's a reflection of their life. So when I go into studio and when I sit down with my notepad, it's bringing in perspectives from my own experiences.
You worked with Korean pop icon Terry Kim on this album for 2 tracks. What was that like?
I love Terry. Terry really should be given a lot of the credit for Breaking the Darkness. And I wrote Nostalgia, and he recorded it on those 2, so I thought it's only right to put them back to back. But he's someone that I met in college at a talent show competition. So we're head-to-head, fierce competitors, of course, in that. And found out that through our very different upbringings, that we both shared this intense love for Oasis, and specifically the songwriting structure of Noel Gallagher. And we start jamming the next day. We get together in Fullerton's music rooms, even though neither one of us was a music major. We're playing the song Whatever, and we're covering it. And it was so beautiful, like the way he plays keys and the way he feels rhythms for songs, and then can contrive all the things going through his head and put them into rhythms that sometimes are dissonant and consonant at the same time. His mastery kind of the keys is what I think sets him apart from other artists, and it's absolute thrill to know and to message him and say, hey man, our 2 songs, they're going up. They're going on the new album. I didn't put them on the last one because it felt like it wasn't ready yet for me to bring out those tracks. They have a lot of intensity there, and I think this is the opportunity, and he deserves all the credit really for Breaking the Darkness especially.
Let's talk about a few songs in particular. You kick off the album with When I'm Older. It sounds like a song about advice that people give and how ultimately we make character-forming decisions. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're going for?
I think that was probably the thought when I sat down with pen and paper, and sometimes those ideas come out beforehand and want to write about this specific concept. I think the time leading up to having our first baby, Dana, there was so much feedback and advice that you don't necessarily ask for it. You're just going to get it. And that's cool. It's one of those neat life moments that people want to talk about. People want to share their experiences. And how cool is that? And I think what came about was ultimately, like in your life, as you grow up, you take all the advice you get, you become the person that you are, but it's you who decides which direction and course of action that your character formation takes. At the end of the day, no one tells you how to think and believe and feel. That really becomes up to you. And I think that song is about finding your identity and becoming the person that you're going to be and the way that you're going to interact with the world. That was my thought going in.
Swan Dive carries a reflective mood. I'm thinking about Don't Worry, I'm With You Now. It seems that you're communicating to us that no matter how bad a day is, having someone there to care for you is a huge comfort. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, even the lyric, like, you've been through a lot, you've been tired, which is perfectly syncing up in the background of your mix, but soon enough, I'll be home, warming by your fire. So there's something comforting. Don't be scared. The world is going to be rough. I think When I'm Older is also the same thing. You get this vibe from people that, like, the world is awful and terrible, but I think it's exposure to whatever you decide to expose yourself to that makes you think it's terrible, right? Whatever way you look at life, it looks at you the same. That's kind of what I was writing about in that song. It won't be long until you find something better. right? Even we'll all get to a point in life, I think, when things are difficult and hard and we'll wish for a different time. But you don't get that. You get the time you're in. And when you think of someone, here it is right here, the lyric, that'll make you smile. And you turn to yourself as you go another mile. You're going to be tested. You're going to continue to be challenged in this life. And if you fold or you continue to show and act as if you're going to always be on your own, it's the way that life is going to treat you. That's the mentality you're going to have. It becomes a habit. So that's what that song's about. You know, there's a handful of songs I feel really strongly about. I'm glad you asked me about this one because I really love it. It's the only song I recorded ukulele on. It's the only song where I really feel like there's a ton of heart in it. And I'm really proud of that particular recording.
Your playing style evolved on this album. More instruments, more harmony. Where is your music headed?
I don't want to get complacent with my play style. I want to continue to challenge myself to listen to more music and more new music. I'm late to the party on a lot of things because of how tightly I held my favorites. But I'm starting to find new artists with new friends that I make, and I'm really enjoying playing the keys lately, coming up with synthesizer lines. I really love intertwining guitar play now, and as harmonies become more comfortable for me, I found it more and more difficult to do songs without them. So those are some of the trends that I'm looking at. I love the way the bands that I follow re-instrument their songs over time. So that's something I'm interested in as well. Always looking to add more to the studio here as well. Like a cajon would be really great, I think, if I did an unplugged album. And a lap steel guitar is a sound that I love, that I would love to incorporate. And, you know, as I follow people on Twitter too, like at DHX Music, or as I listen to more and more people feedback, you know, write me emails at dhxlive@gmail.com, you know, or Danny Hauger at Gmail. I get ideas about chord progressions. They sometimes send me styles that they think I would be interested in. And I think the people who I collaborate with through the many forums out there give me ideas too. And I hope to continue to be creative, but to expand and to do more. You know, I love acoustic stuff, but how far can I go and how much more can I accomplish by branching out?
That's all we have time for today, folks. I strongly recommend acoustic and alternative fans to go check out your album and Danny Hauger Free Music Podcasts. Thanks for joining us today, Danny.
Coco, it means a lot that you take the time and invited me to be on your show. Thank you to all the listeners out there for listening to my rants, for someone you probably have never heard of, but do check out my music. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, Danny Hauger, Hauger. Follow me on Twitter at DHX Music or at Danny Hauger, and I hope you will check it out. There's 700 free songs to download, or at least episodes. And thanks, Coco. And I'll definitely be passing along more listeners to you through Danny Hauger Podcast as well. I'm going to leave you with the song. You requested one here. So here's a live performance for your listeners of the Groundbreaking Indie Artist Podcast. This is an exclusive right here for you, Coco. Thank you. This song's called I Want to Live With You. New album, Swan Dive. Here we go. Almost lost what I had in the end. I compromised. Acquiesced, but not give in. I wanna live with you. Come along, you walk my way, flow of nature, tide of grace, and the sight of sound. I sense the feel unsure. so much for having me, and we'll talk to you next time.